Mexico, a beautiful and vibrant country, home to some of the world's most delicious food, unique cultural experiences, and warmest locals. But in spite of its countless qualities, the country does have an undeniable dark underbelly. One particular stain that Mexico has on its reputation is the danger that women face in their everyday lives. In recent years, the number of femicides throughout Mexico have skyrocketed to unbelievable levels. To put it bluntly, women have been vanishing and turning up dead at an alarming rate, targeted solely for the crime of being female. And one very recent case has brought that issue to the forefront of the nation's public consciousness. The mysterious and extremely disturbing disappearance and death of Debanhi Escobar, an 18-year-old law student living in Apodaca. In the early hours of April 9th, 2022, Debanhi disappeared from the face of the earth after a night out with friends. This eerie final photograph of her, taken by the last person to ever see her alive, her taxi driver no less, spread like wildfire over social media platforms. And over the past few weeks, Debanhi's story has not only captured the attention of Mexicans for how horrific it is on an individual scale, but also for how it shone a light on just how much of a problem the nation has with targeted violence towards females. But we'll get into all of that. For now, let's start at the very beginning. On April 8th, 2022, Debanhi went on a night out with two other young women. Her new friend, Sarai, whom she'd only known for about 4 months, and a girl that she had just met that very night, named Yvonne. At 11 p.m., the three of them ordered a taxi using the rideshare app Didi and made their way into the center of Monterrey, Nuevo Leon. Their driver took them to Simón Bolivar, where they stopped at a store and purchased a bottle of vodka before heading to their first party of the night. As can be seen in the shop surveillance footage, the girls all appeared to be in high spirits and of sober mind. At this point in time at least. After checking out a couple of empty events, the girls finally settled on a party at El Diamante in Quinta. They ordered another taxi using Didi, and a new driver named Juan David Cuellar dropped them off at about 1:20 a.m. Their arrival was caught on a CCTV camera outside the establishment. Please note that due to the Mexican daylight saving time shift, this camera's clock was actually 1 hour behind. Debanhi's new friend, Yvonne, took Juan David's WhatsApp details before exiting the vehicle, just in case they needed to call him later for a ride home. It's not uncommon for these rideshare apps to be unreliable during the early hours, so being able to contact a driver directly made a lot of sense. Outside of the vehicle, the ladies joined up with a group of young men, and they all entered El Diamante together, ready to enjoy a fun-filled night. Just 10 minutes after arriving, at 1:30 a.m., that same outside surveillance camera caught Debanhi leaving the party by herself and heading towards an outside pool area. 4 young men pass her, and, seemingly taken in by her beauty, look back in her direction. It's not known who these men were, if they shouted anything at her, or if they were just talking about her amongst themselves. Debanhi returned to the party soon after. At some point around 3 in the morning, Debanhi allegedly started behaving very strangely. She began shouting and acting very out of character, and at one point even locked herself inside the men's bathroom. Upon exiting the bathroom, she scolded Yvonne for leaving her alone at the party, and, according to Yvonne and other witnesses, continued to cause a scene. This prompted Yvonne to message Juan David, the taxi driver who had dropped them off, asking him to come and pick up Debanhi and take her home. At 3:45 a.m., the camera outside the building caught these images of a clearly distressed Debanhi fleeing from a male partygoer. After he catches up with her, she seemingly slaps and kicks him. Moments later, a number of other people also appear, including Sarai and Yvonne. It's hard to tell for sure what happened here. This large group may have been trying to defuse the situation, but the footage also shows a smaller subgroup of them huddled around Debanhi, preventing her from getting away. At 3:54 a.m., Juan David arrived at the scene in his white taxi. Video captured at a different angle shows Debanhi quickly enter the vehicle before a male and Yvonne say something to the driver. Juan David and Debanhi then leave El Diamante and head east. At 4:17 a.m., another surveillance camera captured this footage of the taxi pulled over a short distance from the party, with Debanhi in the front passenger seat. In the video, it appears as if she and Juan David are having an argument or an animated discussion of some kind. After this, the pair continued on down the road for a minute or two until they came to the Nuevo Laredo highway. It was there that Debanhi told Juan David to pull over. She then exited the taxi and stood motionless in the middle of the road. At the same time, Juan David took this haunting photograph of Debanhi. The road she's standing in is known by locals as the Highway of Death due to the astonishingly high number of women who have disappeared there. Shortly after this image was captured, Debanhi herself would go missing too. At 4:25 a.m., Juan David sent Yvonne this photo of Debanhi standing outside of his taxi. He also sent her texts and voicemails saying that Debanhi had gotten out and that she refused to get back in. He then sent Yvonne this final infamous picture of Debanhi, proving that she was indeed outside of the taxi and was no longer his responsibility. Juan David then drove off, leaving the young, intoxicated Debanhi alone in the road. I stayed parked there for about 3 minutes to see if she'd think twice about staying there, said Juan David. But seeing no reaction from her, I left. Clearly feeling guilty about driving off, Juan David continued to stay in contact with Yvonne for about the next 45 minutes, explaining that he couldn't have touched or forced Debanhi into the vehicle without facing legal consequences, and that it was now her friend's responsibility to go there and get her. About 10 hours later, at 2:54 p.m., he messaged Yvonne one final time to ask her, "What happened to your friend?" Yvonne replied 3 hours later and simply said, "They haven't found her." Debanhi never made it home that night. After Juan David left, nobody ever heard from her again. A CCTV camera caught her moving in the direction of Escobedo, away from the party at El Diamante, walking erratically down the busy highway. She passes a transportation company called Alcosa, and shortly thereafter is seen frantically running into the Nueva Castilla motels and looking in through the windows of its closed-down restaurant, seemingly trying to gain access to the building or see if somebody's inside. Please note that the camera's internal clock was 2 minutes fast. After leaving the indoor camera's field of view, she apparently hid in the corner of the motel's garden for 20 minutes before she was finally caught walking along the wall side. Nobody else appeared in this footage. Nobody else appeared in this footage. These are Debanhi's lost no movements. From there, she simply disappeared. On the morning of April 9th, Debanhi's parents, Mario and Dolores Escobar, reported their daughter missing. To begin with, Juan David, her taxi driver, and the last person to see her was obviously suspect number one. Mario Escobar was convinced that he was the one behind his daughter's disappearance and asserted that, in this footage, Juan David was trying to inappropriately grab Debanhi, hence why she got out of the vehicle. This accusation had an immediate effect on Juan David's reputation and relationships, which in turn forced him to publicly deny his involvement in Debanhi's disappearance. On national television, he explained that in this footage, he was actually struggling to deal with Debanhi, who was either drunk or high or both, and that she was being aggressive with him, slapping him and being totally incoherent. According to Juan David, he was trying to ask Debanhi for her home address or her mother's phone number, but the girl was drunk and angry and refused to give either to him. Unable to calm her down, a frustrated Juan David sent these messages to Yvonne, in which he said that he was struggling and didn't want any problems. Yvonne was unable to give Juan David Debanhi's address or her mother's number, since obviously they had only just met that night, but she did make it very clear in her replies that Debanhi shouldn't come back to the party. In Yvonne's words, Debanhi had been acting uncontrollably, hence why she and the other party members chased her down and surrounded her. They were scared of where she may go or what she may do. However, she did say that Debanhi had only been drinking vodka and hadn't taken any substances. At least, not knowingly. For 12 long days, Debanhi's whereabouts and well-being remained unknown. During that time, investigators and local volunteers searched high and low for the missing young woman. On April 21st, a group of officers approached the Nueva Castilla motel, whose roadside entrance read, "Don't take risks, stay with us." The staff there had complained about a foul-smelling odor coming from the out-of-service restaurant, and the authorities had been summoned to check it out. Given that the motel was the setting of Debanhi's lost no movements, the grounds had already been searched several times, searches which included drones and sniffer dogs. However, it soon became apparent that nobody had bothered to check the restaurant's underground water tank, an area inaccessible to the public, surrounded by a 2.6-meter-high concrete wall and barbed wire. This tank was about 30 feet away from where Debanhi was last caught on camera, and in the same direction she was walking. After peering in to one of the two open cisterns, everyone's worst nightmare was confirmed. At the bottom, 14 feet underground, was Debanhi's lifeless body, lying face down in 3 feet of water. In that same cistern as Debanhi were her removed Converse shoes and a tissue which contained, quote, "cadaveric matter with signs of insect activity." Given that she'd been left for nearly 2 weeks in a hot, damp tank, her remains were unrecognizable, and she had to initially be ID'd by her clothing and necklace. To begin with, the Attorney General's office tried to claim that Debanhi had accidentally fallen inside the tank and drowned after banging her head, a hypothesis that was rejected by her family. A second, much more detailed independent report revealed that she had actually been repeatedly hit in the head by a blunt mechanical object at various angles. There was severe damage to both sides of the frontal region of her skull, as well as above her right ear, on both of her eyelids, on her nose, lips, and the right retroauricular region. According to the manner of death described by the report, quote, "The craniofacial contusions are of external origin to the body, and because they're intense, repeated, and with different angles of impact, it follows that they were caused by another person and that it was a violent homicidal death. Given that there was no water inside her lungs, she must have already been dead by the time that she had been dumped in the tank." The second report also found that Debanhi had been wrong. This had been no accident. This was murder. As mentioned, both of Debanhi's removed shoes and a tissue were also found in the cistern alongside her. However, it also came to light that some of her personal possessions, including her keys, a small bag with the phrase "Stay Grateful" on it, a phone case, a small bottle of hand sanitizer, and her lighter, were found inside the other open cistern, next to the one her remains were found inside. Either she had thrown them in there for some unknown reason before accidentally falling inside, or somebody else had hidden them. Interestingly, more items were also found inside this middle section, which connected the two cisterns. These included a dirt-covered white bra, Debanhi's face mask, her black purse, and 2 pieces of beige fabric. As it would turn out, the Attorney General's office had intentionally been withholding information about Debanhi's case and had made at least 2 errors in their initial finding. That wasn't surprising, given the amount of apathy and negligence the Mexican authorities have shown to countless other cases like Debanhi's, where they've often publicly tried to shame the victim in order to brush the case under the rug. But still, you have to ask yourselves, were their mistakes due to incompetence, or was there a more sinister motivation behind their omissions? Corruption is rife in many parts of the world, and Mexico has more than its fair share of crooked cops. Could they have been covering something up in Debanhi's case? If so, who were they trying to protect, and why? As of right now, there isn't enough evidence to speculate on that. What we can speculate on, though, is what actually happened to Debanhi that fateful night. Let's go over some of the main theories. Theory 1. Given the strange way Debanhi was acting at El Diamante, many have speculated that one of the male partygoers may have slipped something into her drink in order to take advantage of her. When the substance began to take effect, this man made his move, leading to Debanhi biting him and locking herself in the bathroom. Her behavior slowly became more erratic, leading to her screaming for help and exiting the building. It was around then that Yvonne called Juan David to pick Debanhi up. Once inside Juan David's taxi, Debanhi, who was now extremely paranoid and not in control of her actions, began yelling and hitting her driver. She then exited the vehicle on Death Highway. Juan David took her final photo and sent it to Yvonne to show how it was happening before driving away. Yvonne then innocently told the other partygoers what was happening and where Debanhi was. The male who had initially tried to take advantage of her overheard this information and set off to hunt her down. Since Debanhi was only a short distance from where the taxier picked her up, it wouldn't have been difficult to find her. Theory 2. Just as Mario Escobar asserts, Juan David really was trying to grab Debanhi in this footage and ended up following her to the Nueva Castilla motel after she exited the vehicle. He then took her life and discarded her inside one of the open cisterns at the abandoned restaurant. Personally, I don't buy this theory. For one, Juan David wasn't seen on any of the cameras following Debanhi to the motel. He also had no idea that he was going to be called to pick Debanhi up by herself, and therefore would have had to improvise hiding her body on the spot. Given that numerous witnesses saw him driving her away, that would have been a very stupid move on his part, as he would inevitably wind up being a prime suspect. Juan David took her final photo and sent it to Yvonne to show how it was happening before driving away. Yvonne then innocently told the other partygoers what was happening and where Debanhi was. The male who had initially tried to take advantage of her overheard this information and set off to hunt her down. Since Debanhi was only a short distance from where the taxier picked her up, it wouldn't have been difficult to find her. Theory 2. Just as Mario Escobar asserts, Juan David really was trying to grab Debanhi in this footage and ended up following her to the Nueva Castilla motel after she exited the vehicle. He then took her life and discarded her inside one of the open cisterns at the abandoned restaurant. Personally, I don't buy this theory. For one, Juan David wasn't seen on any of the cameras following Debanhi to the motel. He also had no idea that he was going to be called to pick Debanhi up by herself, and therefore would have had to improvise hiding her body on the spot. Given that numerous witnesses saw him driving her away, that would have been a very stupid move on his part, as he would inevitably wind up being a prime suspect. His messages to Yvonne also came across as extremely genuine. Vehiga pues ay lumero es mamá y no quiso. Y me dijo que se iba a fire la verga y no sé qué hizo before. In all likelihood, he's just a taxi driver that got caught up in the crossfire of this terrible tragedy. Should he have left a drunk 18-year-old alone in the middle of a highway? Absolutely not. But was he responsible for what happened to her? I don't think so. He likely assumed that Debanhi would walk back in the direction of the party at El Diamante, while that her friends would come and pick her up. Theory 3. Debanhi fell victim to an opportunistic killer staying at the motel. The fact that nobody's caught on camera following her to the Nueva Castilla suggests that her slayer must have already been there. Given Mexico's huge number of femicides, It's not unbelievable that Debanhi could have randomly stumbled into her killer's path. Given her condition and the fact that she was alone, she certainly would have been easy prey. Now all three of those are, of course, only theories, and until more information presents itself, we can only speculate on what may have happened to Debanhi. But for us to have a more informed opinion, several questions still need answering. What exactly happened at the party to make Debanhi act so erratically? Did she have more in her system than just vodka? Why did she hide for 20 minutes outside the out-of-service motel restaurant? How did she gain access to the area with the cisterns, which was protected by a high wall and barbed wire? How did the pub get to her without being caught on CCTV? Were the cameras tampered with or the footage edited in some way? How did her personal items end up in the small tunnel that connected both of the cisterns? And finally, why did the authorities release incorrect details about her case? Even before her remains were discovered, Debanhi's story had already become huge news in Mexico. Hundreds of thousands of people have been sharing this final image of the young woman on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, debating what may or may not have happened to her and discussing their own theories. News of her body being found shined a light on the massive number of murdered and missing women across Mexico, especially in the state of Nuevo León. Just a few days prior to her slaying, the bodies of 27-year-old Maria Fernanda Contreras and 26-year-old Yolanda Martinez were discovered in the exact same region. The remains of 5 other women were also discovered during the search for Debanhi, which should clue you in to just how huge a problem the country has. After news of Debanhi's death was announced, hundreds of protesters took to the streets and blocked a highway in downtown Monterrey, demanding justice for the tens of thousands of Mexican women who have been killed in recent years, and the tens of thousands more who are still missing. Other protests also erupted nationwide, with hundreds taking to the streets in the capital. In this first half of 2022, 9,600 women have reportedly gone missing in Mexico. 56 women have been murdered in Nuevo León this year alone. 42 of those cases have been classified as femicides. Nationwide, 10 females are killed every single day. Since 95% of these cases go unsolved, at least according to a UN report, it's extremely easy to understand all the national outrage that's beginning to gain international attention. Despite all those terrible statistics, Debanhi's case has gained a huge amount of attention, and as such, authorities now seem to be working hard to solve her case at least, with the president of Mexico himself vowing to find the perpetrator. Until then, until that purpose called, the Escobar family have to go on with their lives, knowing that their 18-year-old daughter's killer is free to roam the streets, just like so many other unidentified killers throughout Mexico. So that was quite a dark case today, and obviously it's still ongoing, so be sure to keep an eye out for updates. Just before the video ends, I'd like to say a huge thank you to my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon, especially my biggest supporters: TNS Mum,